In 2016, I shook my head. In 2020, I excelled in relief. In 2024, I'm shaking my head and I'm aghast. And I don't know how, I think it's going to stick with me a long time. Alrighty, so they say the sun still comes up, or there's daylight the next morning, and I guess that's one thing that is true. There is daylight the next day after such a dark, dismal, gloomy, glum, apocalyptic event that occurred yesterday in the United States. To my right is a bag in which I've got a gig food delivery order on the Grubhub app, and I'm in the process of delivering that order. I'm in the F-150, and as I mentioned in this segment of the Gig Geezer, I have rideshare endorsement on the F-150, so that covers me while in the process of completing deliveries on gig apps. Now, given the glum, apocalyptic, sepulchral events that occurred yesterday, I'm gonna tell you, it takes a little effort to get out here and still try to make money. I'm in a state where it voted overwhelmingly, but obviously the country voted overwhelmingly for what transpired yesterday. And I am in the minority. I'm in a very decided minority. And my thoughts, as I'd mentioned in the previous two installments, my thoughts right now are, yes, I'm out here right now trying to make what I can. Today is starting just like it did Monday and Tuesday, where it appears that there was nothing going on, and I might make maybe $15, and then all of a sudden something broke for me, and I had some delivery opportunities that put me in a plausible position, at least going into today. But again, it's tough to get out here. It really is. I mean, I once said, like 20 years ago, when I was going through some financial difficulties, I said there were moments in which I wanted to just dig a hole, jump in, and just hand somebody the shovel and let them cover me up. And it's easy to feel that way right now. It's easy to want to just crawl off into a hole and just ask somebody to cover me up. But my thoughts are, I've got to do what I can, do what I'm supposed to do what I'm obligated to do at this juncture, but also execute yet another plan. I also want to say this. Those of you who are exulting, I urge you to read Project 2025, Project 2025, because it does talk about taking away for the W-2s, those of you who've been working W-2 and then coming out doing gig work. It talks about taking away overtime pay. It talks about further diminishing government's role in everyday life, meaning that some of the protections that have protected you on the job, like job safety and other environmental things, they may be done away with. They may be. You got to remember, come January 20th, come January 6th, and then January 20th, essentially there is going to be a rubber stamp for whatever wants to be done in that Project 2025 agenda. And so think about this. We talk about how these gig apps are getting over on us and are running game. talk about filing complaints with the Federal Trade Commission, which I did a couple years ago, and I know Steve Wright here, Rodeo, has spoken about the Federal Trade Commission and how they've been looking at DoorDash and Uber and Lyft and Instacart. Hey man, come 2025, that may be that pursuit may be dropped. It would have to be something absolutely high-end egregious for it may be that it has to be high-end egregious for them to step in, meaning that DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, all these apps may have an open path to really jack us over. That's right. See, you say that you voted for you voted for who you voted for, and over what the country has spoken. But you don't. Do you really know what you voted for? Do you really know what's down the pike? I think that people look at the headlines, but they don't read the story. And then those who may read the story, they just glance at it, and that's it, if they do read it all. So, there's some very, very, very uncertain times ahead. And the implications are going to be far-reaching in full years. Someone says, I hope the next 4 years are better. This goes beyond 4 years, buddy. This goes beyond 4 years. It goes far beyond. There's a potential that 2 Supreme Court justices will retire, and then 2 younger ones will be nominated and confirmed, rubber stamped, with at least 55 votes. And they're likely to serve for 15, 20, 25, 30 plus years. That's a long time, buddy. You're talking 2 generations. I'll be dead and gone. I'll be, statistically and actuarially speaking, more than likely dead and gone. There's a chance that depending on who you are, who among you are my subscribers and viewers, you may be gone too. But they'll still be. That's right. It goes beyond just what you're. It goes beyond what's on the crust. You're looking at the cherry on top, but you look inside. It's not a palatable serving. It's not. It's not, man. There's also the vice presidential candidate. He'll be 40 next year. So if your orange demagogue keels over and croaks, which can happen, he takes over. And he's one of the authors of Project 2025. He helped wrote the damn thing, man. You think he's gonna not implement what he wrote? There's a reason why he was the vice presidential candidate. In the event that Orange can't do it, he will. But man, I know it sounds like I'm just spouting out sour grapes. No, I'm not spouting out sour grapes. I'm just pointing out some facts to you, man. I'm pointing out some facts to you. Facts that you failed to, facts that you chose not to observe or take into consideration. Facts that you just scoffed and laughed at and said, "Oh." So if things unfold as what a lot of people think will unfold, I may not be around. But know this, I told you so. Before I finish this particular installment, I got to bring up this example of what the next 4 years could be like, a repeat of. This happened in February 2017, and I was on the Uber app working the airport, and I got what was then a long distance ride. Turned out I was picking up a lady who was going from the Columbia airport to the Atlanta airport. The lady was Scottish, and she told me that she was nervous for being in the United States after what was already declared by the person that obviously a majority of this country voted for yesterday, had implemented a ban on Muslims, a ban on Arabs. And she was concerned that, hey, if this guy's going to put a ban on Muslims, I may be next. And so she hightailed it out of the United States. She got a flight to Canada. In fact, the plane she flew out of Atlanta was Air Canada. She paid $240 for me. She paid $240 to Uber for someone to take her to Atlanta, a 3-hour and 15-minute ride. But that's the type of uncertainty, that's the type of upheaval that was caused 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago. There's no telling what may start next year. I mean, there's no telling. You start with Mexicans and other Central Americans and mainly Mexicans and Central Americans. Then the next group are maybe Haitians and other Caribbean residents of the Caribbean. But you know what's interesting? The ban on Muslims was in itself unjustifiable. But you know what's interesting with this particular guy? He talks about immigrants, right? Talks bad of immigrants, talk bad of various groups of people. Now, if you're in transportation, you know the group of people that has taken over a lot of transportation? Eastern Europeans and Russians. Eastern Europeans and Russians. And people from India. A lot of the dispatchers are from India. I've never heard anything negatively said about those groups. But it's always been about Mexicans, Central Americans, and people from the Caribbean. I should tell you something, man. I should tell you something. But if you're not reading between the lines, if you're not reading beneath the headlines, you're not going to talk about those things. The mindset is much like Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt was one of the biggest racist presidents out there as well. But these are things that's not talked about. But this guy, there's more. We will see a lot of things unfold in a much bigger. We're going to see a lot of things that unfold. That there are going to be people that are just going to sit back and kind of just nod their head and just wait for your reaction. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to sit back and wait for your reaction. I may still be in South Carolina, or I may be somewhere else. But at some point, it's going to happen where I'm going to be able to sit back and nod my head at your reaction.